we will look at a couple examples of the fork trick from different openings that do not begin with the moves e4, e5. The fork trick is probably the most common in e4, e5 openings, but it does happen in other cases. We'll start by looking at a position that begins with the move c4. This is called the English opening. In this position, there are a few moves for white, but one move that has become somewhat popular recently is the move pawn e4. I believe this was recently played by Magnus Carlsen. And white's last move, pawn e4, has really weakened the d4 square. The d4 square is now potentially an outpost for a black piece. Black has a pawn controlling d4, and white can never get a pawn attacking this square. So the logical move for black would seem to be bishop c5, developing a piece and controlling the outpost. But of course, bishop c5 might run into white's idea, which is to play the fork trick. Here, white will play the move knight takes e5. This is a complex position, and black is probably doing fine here, but I'll show one line that seems to happen a lot where black gets a really bad position. Let's say black plays knight takes e5 and white plays pawn d4. This is the point, the fork, of course. And now we'll play one more move for black that looks very logical, but is actually a very big mistake. Black could try bishop d6. Remember, at this point, white has sacrificed a knight for a pawn. So white is down 2 points of material, but white is threatening to get a minor piece, 3 points. White is threatening to be a pawn up. So black needs to figure out how to get a pawn for whichever piece they are going to lose. And one logical looking way to do that is the move bishop d6. Black is thinking, white's going to take, and then we will take. But here white has kind of a strange looking move that's not capturing the knight on e5. Sometimes this happens in the fork trick. The side that performs the fork trick then has some additional tricky moves to play later, and here a very strong move for white is the move pawn c5, attacking the black bishop. So instead of capturing a piece, white is attacking another piece. White is still a knight down, but white once again is threatening 2 minor pieces. White's idea is that if black plays a move like, say, castle, well, then we will take the bishop, and we still have this threat against the knight. So like most versions of the fork trick, here we can see that black's position in the center has been completely destroyed. Black's center pawn has disappeared. Here white actually has 3 pawns in the center for the moment. This looks very bad for black. The next idea of the move c5 is that it seems like the logical way for black to not be a pawn down is to just sacrifice the bishop right away for the pawn. Now white will take the knight, and the point of this is that basically white lost their c pawn instead of losing their e pawn. So now we have another situation where white is left with 2 pawns in the middle against black's no pawns. In this position, the black knight is attacked, and it also doesn't have a very good square, since all of these squares that it would like to go are controlled by white pieces. So here, black would have to play sort of an embarrassing move. Their knight would have to go back to g8 where it started, and this position is simply very good for white. White has 2 pawns in the center against no pawns in the center, and white has extremely fast development of their remaining pieces. Now we will look at another version of the fork trick from black's perspective. In this opening, black is going to let white get really good control of the middle. Some of you watching this video may have heard about the position sometimes called the dream position, which is supposed to be the best possible position you can get in the opening. In this situation, white is really close to achieving the dream position with 2 pawns in the center and all of the pieces out controlling the center. But actually here, white has perhaps made a small mistake, and black can create an equal position by doing the fork trick, of course. Black can play knight takes e4, getting rid of one of white's center pawns. And if white takes it, well, then we have the move d5. And white's very nice center formation with 2 pawns side by side. Now it's been destroyed, and soon black will probably try to get rid of white's other center pawn with the move pawn c5 in the coming moves. So this position is actually very close to equal, despite looking very good for white here. I'll just add one more thing about this position, which is if we go back 2 moves, the most popular move for white here is to take this bishop and put it on e2. Bishop e2 looks not very exciting compared to bishop c4. Bishop c4 simply looks like a more aggressive move, but bishop e2 is probably a much better move because now there's no fork trick. Without the bishop on c4, black is unable to do the fork trick, and therefore white is able to maintain the 2 pawns in the center. Black needs to look for a different way to disrupt white's central formation. Now we will look at one final version of the fork trick. This one is going to come from the Sicilian defense. And specifically, black is going to play the move g6 here. This is called the accelerated dragon variation. And in this situation, black is threatening the fork trick. So if white plays a normal move like castle, well, then black is able to equalize the situation in the center right away. Right now it looks like white has a pawn in the center and sort of more pieces actively in the center than black. But this will all change if black plays the move knight takes e4, the fork trick once again. The white knight will capture, and then pawn to d5. And let's just play a couple more moves, maybe something like this. Now we can see that actually both of white's knights are under attack, so white must be a little bit careful here. But no matter what white does next, we can see that their knights in the center are going to get traded off or driven back. White's central pawn that used to be on e4 is now gone. So once again, we see one side using the fork trick to take control over the center and reduce the opponent's influence in the center part of the board. I'll go back a few moves here. If we look in a chess database and we look at what really strong chess players do in this position as white, they all recognize that the fork trick is now a threat. So white plays kind of a funny looking move most of the time. Bishop to b3. This is just a pure defensive move, stepping out of the fork trick. Now the fork trick does not work because the bishop has been preemptively backed up away from the c4 square, so it's no longer attacked when black goes d5. In this case, the fork trick would simply lose a piece for black. White could save their knight, put their knight somewhere, and just be a piece up.